Okay, hello, my name is Oscar.
It's Jimmy.
Hey, today we're going to be doing a podcast. We're going to be talking about the hills we are willing to die on, and we've gotten some of the spiciest takes for you today. Okay, so Jimmy, how would you like to start us off?
I guess we can. Do you want to do like a pickup of where we ended up last time?
Sure. Okay.
Because I feel like it flows into like what we want to talk about next, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the last time we talked. Oh, I was talking about how I feel like a hot take as well is that tutoring is okay in even casual games.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because all you're doing is grabbing a card that's already in your deck. So if it's a casual deck, like you're not like tutoring out like a fastest oracle or something like that, or however that works. I don't even know how those deck works anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's kind of what I left off on last time was just that, tutoring is okay. Like strong plays are okay. Yeah.
Okay. It was actually kind of hard to bring this into light because there's sort of like this dark part of myself I don't like bringing up, but it's there and it's in the back of my mind. And anytime I see, Vampiric and the Demonic Tutor are the big ones. Anytime I see those two cards, I look down on you. It is, oh my gosh. I'm thinking, okay, if you need those cards, and if it's a combo deck too, that's like the holy trinity for me. I have lost all respect to you as an EDH player. And I think a lot of that comes down to not respecting the singleton format. The fact that our decks only have one copy of each card, except for the three Kodamas reaches we have, the Kodamas and Cultivate. But anytime I see tutors, especially if it's in combination with a combo deck, I am, okay, well, that's what you're here to do. You're here to do it. I guess, we just need to add more anti-tutor effects like oppositionation. Now I'm thankful I don't have to add those cards, but they have been creeping up in our play group. Yeah, so maybe we just have to add them in. Like, it's opposition is back on the menu, boys. What do you think, Jimmy?
Why? I think those kind of so like you're saying, like those that trinity, right? You're tutoring, it's a combo, and it's like winning like as fast as soon as possible. I think if anything, that's just a difference in CDH, right? CDH and regular EDH. I still don't think there's anything inherently wrong with those decks and those strategies, but it seems like this issue more stems from like seeing a competitive CDH deck in a casual pod. That sounds like that's. Would you say like that's more where that issue stems from? Like,
I think when one player is a combo deck and the other players are not, it invalidates the health total. Because if prior to this pod, right, if I wasn't aware of this and this is how the deck ends up winning, it changes my entire threat assessment of your deck. Like, if we ever do a game again, I know that the combo deck doesn't respect health totals. It just needs to find the pieces and wins on the spot. Whereas if I deal 5 damage to Jimmy, right, and Jimmy for the most part is going to be winning with damage, then yeah, sure, it's like Jimmy, like, health is sort of like a clock for everybody, but I feel like combo decks just disrespect this element of, hey, like, I just need to find enough of my pieces and I am able to win. And if this is not, if we don't talk about this before a pod starts, sure, why not? We can call it as it is. It's just, next game I'll be more aware of what you're trying to do, but I gotta punish it. I can't just let you play under the radar like everybody. That's all we're trying to do. We're all trying to play under the radar, and we're all trying to win in our own way. But when one player wins with a combo, he does not care what else anyone else has. So he's got to get punished. I mean, again, like, it definitely depends on. Like, once you play this other card with your commander, you win the game. If it's sort of like that, then my you gotta die. You gotta die. Sorry, no, like, yeah. Anyways, that's my hot take on it. You just, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like what the issue is more of just seeing a combo competitive deck in a non-competitive environment. Because would you not then say if you saw those elements individually, it's not a problem?
I think if we can. It doesn't even have to be competitive. The deck doesn't have to be competitive. It could be like a bunch of jank things, but it has this one card which makes it go infinite, and you just need to have it with a commander. Mm-hmm. And that's like the issue. It's like, yeah, once it comes out, then you just win, and nothing else about your deck, your setup, nothing else really, really mattered what you did that entire game. Those are usually the things I see creep up on games, and sure, it's a cool thing that only you can do with your deck, and yeah, it looks like you have won. Yeah, we at the very least we can just go to another game, and but it doesn't have to be competitive. No, it's not competitive. Right. It's just
not a commonly known combo, but maybe it's like a nichier combo, but a combo nonetheless.
Yeah, and it just kind of invalidated the rest of the game. It invalidated the rest. It doesn't even synergize with anything on your board. You just win with it, and that's the part. It, like, the whole game just felt like, oh, we were having a good time. Like, someone was ahead, then someone was ahead, and then there is this beautiful pacing of this game, right? It's like, oh my gosh, is Jimmy gonna have it? It's like, oops, wait, I accidentally I accidentally became God and I just won. And then we're like, wait, what? What was happening? We were having a time. We were in an adventure, and then all of a sudden, like, he just became God. Yep, I'm accidentally God now. You guys are dead. Oh, okay. Like,
but this loops back to what we talked about before.
Yeah.
I mean, you already know, like, we already talked a lot about that last time. Because, in short, my take on that is I think that's actually A-okay.
Yeah.
I still do think that is, if you happen to just pull off is this jank infinite combo that's specific to your commander in a casual setting. And because, like I said, we talked about hitting that individually, right? Like, you didn't like turn one tutor it and turn two do it. It's like, I don't know, you're just playing regularly. You just happen to draw it. You managed to pull it off like turn 10 or something. To me that's still okay. I think, yeah, it does suck. Maybe you just happen to get it in your starting hand. You're just holding this bomb in your hand this whole time, and then you just decide to do it whenever you can. I mean, sure, that might happen every once in a while, but the way I see it, because how you're saying, like, you see it as like this steady adventure where everyone's building towards something, and then one person just randomly explodes and wins the game. I still think that's okay. Like, I honestly still think that's okay because it's just a good play. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, they got lucky, they made a good play, and they won that game. Like, to me, that's just how I see it. Like, combo or not.
You actually answered my thing which was if it randomly happens on turn 10. That's the thing. If it's, yeah, sure, if it happens on turn 10, game's got to end, but it's when it happens like on turn 3 or something, and it just... But yeah, you know, like, you would never do that. You have the self-restraint. That's something I really appreciate about you. But yeah, no, yep, you play a 3-drop, which synergizes with your 5-drop, and now, yeah, no, that's, ugh. It just leaves a sour taste in my mouth, yeah. Anyway, do you want to do that?
Anyway, but yeah, that's just like rehashing.
Yeah, it's
what
a
we
rehash. It's a rehash.
about.
It's a rehash. Yeah. Okay, what's the next take? Do you want it? I kind of want to do this one. Okay. I think the best thing you can do right now, if you want to get better at Magic, is you go to your printer, you go to a FedEx or something, and you start proxying everything. You get, you know, like 10 copies of Ristic Study, you get Fierce Guardianship. Dude, you are going to be so good at the game. Because, okay, here's a take. I think everybody should have, you know, like 21 rings, put them into their decks and play with all these powerful cards, because the strongest thing that I can tell you to do as a player is realizing that, oh, my deck's a little strong. It's having you choose to take away those cards on your own once you've won enough times with them. It's like once you know, it's once I took away my Jessica's Will from my own decks and started taking away Ristic Study and Fierce Guardianship and Cyclonic Rift, things that for a very long time, these were all staples that I had in like it's like all of these proxy decks that I used to have. But once I started taking them out, the games became a lot harder, but I actually enjoyed it because these cards, which were staples, were kind of a crutch to me. I had to rely on them to win. And once I had to remove them, the thing though, removing them was my choice. And I chose to remove them after getting feedback from my own friends and asked them what was more annoying, this or that. And from there, I concluded that, okay, I want to win without them so I feel like my victory was more earned. And honestly, that was just my little adventure going on proxying and getting all the EDH recommendations. It's like, oh, Cyclonic Rift has so much synergy with this deck. Of course it does. Of course your Ristic Study has synergy. It has synergy with everything. But once I started getting rid of them, that was such a powerful move to me because it was my choice. It wasn't because somebody told me to get rid of it. I wanted to see if I could win without them. And I think this might be like what makes me kind of good at Commander. It's being able to choose which cards to take away from certain decks and challenging myself to harder games and still trying to improve that way. What do you think? I think proxying, everyone should do it. Just do it.
Wait, so so I personally agree with that as well, because that's something I do myself. It was like, when I first started playing Magic and I was looking to like upgrade my decks. I mean, everyone at some point, then looks at the more expensive staples, right? Like we mentioned Ristic Study, Cyclonic Rift. Like one of the first decks I had that I really upgraded with those types of staples was a Yuriko deck. Yuriko Tigers. I don't even remember what it's called. It's been so long. Like Yuriko's Tiger Shadow. Yeah. I remember because I really like ninjas. I thought it was really cool. It was a little bit of chaos, how you flip cards and do damage based on CMC. I thought that aspect was really fun. And once I had like the core cards to make the deck functional, it was the first deck where I intentionally went and purchased the expensive singles like the Ristic Study, the Deadly Rollick, Mana Drain, Vampiric Tutor, Demonic Tutor. Like I really went out of my way to get those staples that I've never had before. And once I had them, it definitely took my deck to another level. the way I made it, it wasn't, it wasn't like a CDH Yuriko. It was still like this ninja tribal. I'm only using Yuriko's ability to do damage. There's no infinites, but once I've played the deck enough times, and you get that, you get over that initial, rush of adrenaline. It's like, now I use a deadly rollout for free, exile. It's, or, the Ristic Study, you draw like just 20 cards over the course of the game. It was very like empowering the first couple of times. But then I realized that, especially in my colors, right, I was using these very, and like, I know everyone says like price isn't really the issue. Everyone kind of says that, everyone kind of dances around that topic, but I think that ultimately is a issue, even if people want to admit it or not. Maybe that's a hot take I have, but I do think that these cards are expensive for a reason, and the more of these types of cards you have in your deck, the more likely your deck is just stronger no matter what.
The elephant in the room is Magic the Gathering is a pay-to-win game. Believe it or not, yes.
Yeah.
Like, Vampiric Tutor is just going to make your deck better, regardless of it.
Yes, and even though my Yuriko deck, like I said, was like a ninja tribal only type of deck, even though it did have those restrictions, I did notice such a huge increase in consistency in my wins, in the speed of my wins. What actually put me off from the deck, which is why I never played it for such a long time now, is I remember one time it was just a casual pod. Like in my mind, I thought, hey, my Yuriko's deck's pretty strong, and we don't have that much time. This is my fastest deck. Let me just use Yuriko, right? And I remember I won so fast that I surprised myself. I think I won like turn like 4 or 5. It was like just the perfect, like I had like the perfect hand, that just the perfect sequence of cards, the perfect like top deck manipulation, that I just happened to kill everyone at turn 4 or 5 by like flipping like a CMC 17 card twice, essentially. And it was after that game that I realized, whoa, these staples pushed my deck to a power level that I did not want it to be in. Even though it was still Ninja Tribal, it was so strong, so fast, that it killed the mood, essentially. Like, I know that it was not what other players were expecting when I described the deck.
Oh, you were the pub stomper.
Yeah, I pub stomped them. Though unintentionally, that was the effect that those staples had. The mana drains, the deadly relics, the free spells, the Sensei's top with the reality chip, with the infinite draw. So, dang, what were we talking about again?
We were talking about choosing to remove the staples from the deck.
Yes.
But that being a choice. Like,
yes.
I had that. Okay, so yeah.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. So because of that, I then decided that my Yuriko deck was too strong for my intended play groups. Yes, I could have, went C, maybe like joined more like competitive pods, more CDH pods, but I didn't enjoy those types of games, those types of combo-y games. But like I said, the staples pushed my deck closer to that area, and I no longer enjoyed it anymore. So I ended up just shelving Yuriko. It's still on my shelf. All those cards are still in it. But yeah, but now, like, I've moved on to other decks. The new decks that I make now, I intentionally don't include those cards now because, for multiple reasons, right? I enjoy the diversity in my decks. I dislike having multiple of the same copies of one card in all my decks. And the games just felt funner without them.
I say it as celebrating the singleton format. You know, it's like, oh, how can I enjoy the variance in how I win, especially if it's a way of winning I've never done before. You know, like my copy decks, you know, where I'm copying my opponent's things. And to me, that's like peak Magic, because every win will be different in its own way. That was actually inspired by your Saheeli, by your copy effects, actually.
Right.
Yeah. Wow, man. I think there's this other secondary reason why I do think everybody should proxy. And it's something that I saw in a new player. So we have this fantastic player, shout out to Frankie. And we were able to help him make a deck. We were able to like help him go from a pre-con to something strong, like really, really quickly. And he got into a position where he actually started pub stopping too, unintentionally. You know, he was still relatively new, and he usually was the person getting stomped. So it was very, you know, it like this was new territory for him. He was never in the role of, oh my gosh, I'm just able to kill everybody now. And one of the fantastic things that I would see on him was he had to have that rule zero conversation first, you know, which is not something you usually do as a new player. Usually you're expecting the veteran players to have a rule, to start the rule zero thing. But him being the new player and being able to kind of stomp people with his decks, it was now his responsibility. Like that's it. Having this responsibility to say, hey, what are we all playing here, right? And when you have those staples, it was on me. It was on me because I know myself. I know how strong I can go, like how strong my decks can go. And being able to own up and make sure, you know, I match what, you know, people bring in, especially with the pods here in this gaming store where you're going to have a whole variance of power levels. Just so, yeah, I think that's something that I really like. Having the being able to initiate that rule zero conversation, because he was actually like, the issue was he was stomping you, Jimmy. And we had like this talk. He was like, no, I didn't enjoy like actually like, you know, against Jimmy. And this was like a reoccurring problem. And I said, oh, you know, now it's on you to make sure your decks are able to meet the power level of the pod. It's not just going to be a high powered pod with me, Christian, and Angel. Now it's up to you, you know? So that's actually something I really like, being able to start that rule zero conversation because your decks are that strong. Yeah.
It is because of those pods though that like I do think back of maybe I should like bring out Yuriko again sometime. Just because you guys do tend to run stronger decks than I usually try to make. But I mean that is just like a personal decision on my end too, is that I do enjoy decks that sit around like pre-con plus levels, you know, like stronger than a pre-con, but not so much where it feels stompy or it may feel oppressive. I think that is something. But I feel like I've only come to that conclusion because I've been on the extreme end of it, right? Like whether on the receiving end or on the, you know, dishing it out end. You know, like I've had the one Merkle deck where it was like the hate bears lock everyone out deck. And once I've had the extreme of it where I was absolutely suppressing everyone else, I've come to realize, like, you know, once I've had that extreme taste of it, it's like, whoa, that wasn't that fun. Like that game wasn't very fun. I didn't enjoy the win, though it was, you know, in a theme I enjoyed. It was like this kind of niche or unique spin on like enchantments and things like that. I did think to myself that I didn't enjoy the win. And I didn't enjoy the reputation my deck then earned because of how oppressive it was. And so, yeah, like it was fun at first. The first time I did it, or the first time someone sees it, there is that wow factor, that novelty factor that we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But, definitely once the novelty wore off, I realized that I did not enjoy doing the same thing over and over. It was the exact same strategy every single game, and which is why I take my decks in this direction now. This Precon Plus level, where I try to build my deck in a way that there's enough variance in it, where I'm not doing the same thing every game. That each card I draw, each hand I get matters what's in it. But that is how I enjoy the game. But there are plenty of pods that we end up in. I'm up against decks that are a lot stronger than mine because I don't include staples, because of all these restrictions I put on myself. And I'm not saying that they can't have fun with it, but if I were to do it, I wouldn't have fun with it. And of course, being on the receiving end of it isn't that fun either. But these are, like I said, these are just restrictions that I put on myself.
Jimmy, as your therapist. Okay, I can see it. You went on the furthest level that you are willing to touch. And then, actually, quick question, a little out of that game of Yuriko, was that the one in Beers for the Meeples?
Yes.
I remember that game.
Yeah.
I remember that because it was closing, and
Yeah.
you went to like a pod with people from, I think it was Bulldogs. Yeah, I remember it was and I know some of the people that you played with had like lowish powered decks.
Yes.
And
yeah.
It was like, oh, cool, he's gonna play Yuriko. I remember that day because you looked so defeated afterwards. And
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what was up, but I saw you you looked down. And I was like, oh, well, dang, that game went pretty quick. I wonder, yeah, looks like Yuriko didn't work. Yeah. But I didn't realize that was the big revelation, that it was like, oh, okay, well, dang.
Yeah, because the crazy thing is, I don't think I even tutored that game. I think I just had like the perfect hand to bring out Yuriko, like turn 2, attack. I just needed to attack twice, like turn 3, turn 4, and then I think I won either turn 4 or turn 5. But I think the specific cards I had a scroll rack with a Draco, or like the Hand of Mortality. It was like a 16-17 CMC card.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I attacked with Yuriko, I top deck it, did 16 damage. Next turn, repeat, another 16 damage, and that's that was enough. Like that finished everyone off like instantly. And everyone else had like 2 mana rocks, and I don't know.
Maybe looking back at that game, because I've also been. It's like I accidentally have Stomp, believe it or not. But I think it was just it wasn't the right pot for it. I think that thing, yeah.
And then of course there was like the luck factor there. The luck factor was there. Like the lucky hand, just the right cards. No one had any early creatures out, so Yuriko could freely swing at people. There was like a perfect storm there, but I think what stung the most was it performed so well, but at the same time I could have restrained myself too, but it was at the time I didn't have those ideas yet, the thought of self-restraint.
Because I at that point where we're still kind of early, I think, and we've discussed this before, if you have those cards, you chose to put them there for a reason.
Yeah.
Play them out, and maybe on the next game, maybe you can choose to take things out if you want to lower the power level of your deck. But that's, respect the deck. That's what you have. I don't think you should hold back. I think maybe sometimes it is the wrong pod to bring it out in, but then it's on you because you chose to bring out this deck.
Yeah.
So you could have chosen something else. So I would say don't hold back. You brought that deck for a reason, and at least you guys can finish this game off and use a different deck. But yeah, that's what I would say there, man. Those pieces are there. And on average, like you say, you have the perfect hand, and how crazy! No one had creatures on turn 2. No, of course, it's a commander. Like, there's always gonna be one random player who's not gonna be playing creatures. Of course, that's gonna happen. That's not a luck factor. That's the average.
That is something that Yuriko does take advantage of.
It exploits it.
Most likely, turn 3, maybe turn 4. Like, there's someone that doesn't have a creature out.
Even if it's a creature, it's just going to be a value creature. You think I'm going to block with my Llanowar elves? Absolutely not. Like, do attack me for random damage. Like, yeah. I think the thing is, Yuriko is just faster than average. It does, like, I think saying you got a lucky hand gives it a backhanded, like it tries to pull away from the real it's just a faster deck. We just say that on average, it's just faster than everyone else. So I don't think it's a luck factor, if anything. It's just faster than average, and accidentally stomped. I think it happens to every one of us, but I still I still would like you to bring something like of that caliber with us, just so that we can include you.
Yeah.
That's.
It does have some like very nostalgic pieces in it. Like, it has like this foil borderless Imperial seal.
I knew you were gonna say that.
I pulled from a booster pack.
I remember that.
Yeah, and maybe that was what really started it all. Like, me buying staples is because I pulled that out of a booster pack, and it was like, well, now that I have this. I gotta get a vampiric tutor, like, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
Same thing happened to me with Godless Shrine. When I won it, when Clovis cards closed, I was like, I might as well build the rest of Tasek Karlov. And I remember you looking at me, you're like, Oscar, that's stupid. Why would you do that? You just had a Godless Shrine. No, Jimmy, I'll just build the rest of the deck. I already have one of the pieces.
Oh yeah, that is how it started. Like, it was like your I don't want to say like your first non-proxy card, but I want to say like your first expensive non-proxied card, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
I had some, but they all came from pre-cons because they try to avoid buying packs.
Yeah.
But I did it just out of I wanted to just actually to be honest, it was because I also wanted to have a deck like yours. I was like, I would also like to engage in Magic the way Jimmy and Michael and everyone else kind of engages it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all those pieces were expensive. But I do like that at the very least the Tesa deck is actually kind of, it's strong, and it's just strong.
But I do enjoy, I do feel like I swing like on this pendulum sometimes, where I went from a Yuriko deck with tutors and Ristic Study and all those like strong staple pieces, that do work, that do have good synergy. I went from one side of the pendulum to the other, where it's no staples, all basic lands. And I do feel myself swinging back a little bit sometimes. I've done the whole, with my current decks, right? Like the last couple of decks that I've like built and been playing recently, it's like, they're strictly all basic lands. like lower power, like, well, when I say lower power, but I'm referring to like precon plus levels, you know. But I feel like I've kind of like had my fill of it a little bit, and I do feel myself swinging, like leaning back towards those decks that ran those staples, you know, or at the very least, you know, ran them in a synergistic way. I still do value that, you know, the synergy of it, the kind of chaos feel to it, where, you know, I don't want to be tutoring for combo pieces, but I do like, you know, my most recent, like a Runo Stormkirk deck, where that deck would be really fun with some tutors, but only to tutor out the Metamorphic Fanatic. and then it's like this looping, resurrecting, reanimating piece. Like I do feel myself swinging back to that mindset of, you know, I think I do want to start using some tutors again, to explore like these different strategies that I didn't explore before, back when I was using tutors in my decks.
I think tutors in that deck, though, are a way for you to turn on the commander, right? Yeah, what was the name of the commander?
Runo Stormkirk.
Runo Stormkirk. Because he needs to see a creature with a certain CMC to flip. So it's usually you're using a tutor as a mana rock almost, to like, or I don't want to say a mana rock, but you need it to develop or put your commander. It's top deck manipulation, but the strongest thing you can do in that tutor is to flip your commander just so that you can play the game. So I feel like that's pretty fair. I mean, you could also just tutor a Rhystic and Cyclonic if you had those pieces in your deck, Cyclonic Rift. But no, I mean, I feel like in that deck, I'm seeing you attack with sea creatures and things, and it just feels like a very fair deck.
Yeah, well Runo, I feel like the way the deck was intended, it was intended to have like top deck manipulation, in which tutors perfectly fit that bill. So I do think it is a deck that relies heavily on it, or at the very least, you need to consistently have like these high CMC creatures on the top of your deck. But at the same time, you don't want to just, you know, have a dead hand where it's just full of creature cards that are high in CMC that you can't do anything with. So a deck like that, like once I built it out without staples, without, you know, like strong cards in it, and then I realized it didn't work without them. Like it was intended to work with those. Like without it, the deck was just dirtle.
I think I'd be there are so many little caveats to Vampiric Tutor is, I mean, dude, if you need it to just play your Sea Kraken Typal deck, dude, absolutely go for it, because that deck needs those things just to play the game. I think that is something I would make an exception for, because my original argument was, if you use tutors, I look down on you. But dude, I'm playing Goat Tribal, you know, like the strongest thing I can do in that deck is make a land that can make a 0/1 goats. Like I do need all of this just to turn on the deck. But yeah, you know, like we say that there are these like low power decks, and for every one Jimmy there's like 9 other players who is not respectful of a power that this card has. And it's usually giving them I mean, realistically, it's like a Rhystic Study early on, and then after that, it's... if they're not playing combo, one of the things that I do like tutors being used for is to deal with immediate problems. Like, let me get my my board wipe, because otherwise we're just going to lose next turn. I think that is something that did, like, move me a little bit to tutors. It's like, yeah, like, this is the only way we can deal with it. Let me tutor out for this answer and not lose on the next turn. I think that I'd be okay with that. Tutoring for answers, not tutoring to combo out. Yeah.
I think that's a good transition to my hot take.
Okay. Let's see your hot take.
My hot, and like, I know this is a hot take because I know that probably 99 out of 100 people will disagree with it, but this is totally the way I see it. And to kind of lead up to that is one of the reasons why in my recent decks, I had this thought to only run basic lands. And it's because, we've said all these things about tutoring, right? Like tutoring, but when we say tutoring, everyone usually refers to like a vampiric tutor or a demonic tutor, something that has tutor in its name. But what I found interesting was that no one considered limited tutors the exact same thing. And when I say limited tutors, I mean like, what's that red one? Like the Imperial Recruiter, Ranger Captain of Eos, Goblin Engineer. Like these are still tutors. Yes, they're limited and some of them are very specific, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Like a Goblin Engineer tutoring out an artifact in a artifact deck, it might as well have been just a vampiric tutor. Or with the Ranger Captain of Eos in a Aristocrat Teysa Karlov deck. It might as well be a demonic tutor. Like
I do run
in fact, it's a
Teysa.
double trigger, right? So it's even better in most cases.
It's even better
There's
because
more
it's a creature,
synergy.
because you can reanimate it.
It's recurable. So what I found interesting was that when people, as a general rule, I think most people would agree, that tutoring is very strong, it's very consistent, it pushes your... I think most people would not disagree with those statements, but for some reason, these limited tutors seem to all slide under the radar, even though in most cases, they're more synergistic in certain decks. And so that's part of my hot take is well, to clarify, I do think tutoring is okay. Well, my hot take is that everyone that says it's not okay, for some reason, think that limited tutors are a-okay. That's the first hot take. And the second hot take, the one that I think everyone disagrees with, I feel like Fetchlands are the exact same thing. It is a limited tutor. It's a very, very specific type of tutoring, but ultimately you're still tutoring. And what is the point of a tutor, right? In any deck is consistency. Whatever your strategy is, whatever your goal is, tutors in the deck is to just make it more consistent, which is exactly what Fetchlands do. They turn your mana base, all your lands, or whatever you're using, you'll always consistently have the colors that you need. I know most people will probably see it as a minor issue. Everyone has Fetchlands, especially with the recent reprint, how they're a lot cheaper. Like, they're more available to everyone at a more reasonable price. But to me, like, that's not the issue. Like, that's not the thing that I'm seeing. The thing I'm seeing is that the exact same people who will condone tutoring will defend Fetchlands and limited tutors to death. And that is something I find incredibly strange. And so because of that, I feel like me using basic lands only in my deck, it was also to, like, for two reasons. Like, one was I had these really nice, full art foil basic lands I wanted to use, right? I liked looking at my land base that are all consistent from one set, all shiny. There was a certain enjoyment to that. But at the same time, it was also as a way to prove that you don't need Fetchlands. Like, yes, they're great. Yes, of course they are. But I wanted to use basic lands because, I mean, what inspired me was I had played against a 5-color Kenrith deck that ran only basic lands. And that's what inspired me, which gave me the thought of, hey, I can just run basics too. And it works. It works out. And I do feel that color fixing is part of the game. You know, that's why we have talismans. That's why Chromatic Lantern is a must include in any, you know, 3 or more color deck. Like, color fixing is part of the game. And I think that, you know, seeing, you know, over and over, like we talk about combos and staple cards, right? Well, then Fetchlands, Shocklands, Triomes, those are cards that I have seen too many times, I feel. And that when I see them now, it gets incredibly boring. Yeah, sure, you know, basics, you see basics all the time, right? But to clarify, I don't have an issue with tutoring. What my hot take is that how people don't view tutors and fetchlands and limited tutors as the exact same thing. I know I've already have seen some reactions to me saying that before. I know people don't agree with me, which like I said, I don't understand why.
Ladies and gentlemen, Evolving Wilds is a tutor.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So,
yeah,
so that was actually something that Angel brought up was, okay, Fetchlands, you got to pay a life, the land enters untapped. There's real value in that. You know, you're playing on curve. What about Evolving Wilds that come in precons?
I see that the same as a Soul Ring that comes in precons. I do think that this one, like, having a tapped land is, I think that's the difference, that it comes in tapped.
Okay.
Like, it's a very specific land. It has to be a basic, and it comes in tapped. Because for example, you're running a 2-color, 3-color deck. The best land that covers as many colors as possible, but comes in tapped, there are many of those. So choosing to use Evolving Wilds over just, you know, I'm running Dimir, right? And I just have a Dimir Aqueduct or whatever. You know,
it's polluted Delta.
No. I'm referring to the 2-color lands that just come in tapped.
Oh.
You know, like Temple of whatever. You know, those.
Oh yeah, the land that has you bounce back a land into your hand.
No. I'm talking about like in a general, like any
any
land that comes in tapped, any 2-color land that comes in tapped.
Okay.
You know, choosing to use Evolving Wilds over the multitude of cards that are out there that already come in tapped, but have like 2 or 3 colors. I feel like using Evolving Wilds is also like an intentional statement as well. You know, it is lower power, but that's the base. It is the base that everything else is then compared to, right? Is it a form of tutoring? Yes, it is. Yes, it is a form of tutoring. And like I said, I don't feel there's nothing wrong with tutoring. But what I like about Evolving Wilds itself is just, in terms of power level and consistency, is that it comes in tapped and it must be a basic land. Like, to me, that's just the basis of what, you know, precon power levels are. And so then we talk about like things like Fetchlands, right? Yeah, like you pay a life, you get a Triome. Turn 2, you fetch again for a shock, and
the land enters untapped.
Yeah, sure. And so it's not that I have a problem with lands. It's not that I have a problem with fetching or tutoring. It's just I find it interesting that everyone like now that, you know, as I said, now that Fetchlands are much more cheaper, I find it interesting that so many people run these cards, these tutors, and then in the same breath say that you cannot use a vampiric tutor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot here. I'm not gonna lie. The reason I also brought up Evolving Wilds is because the basis for your argument, at least from the way I'm understanding it, is the polluted delta is able to color fix me, right? It gets me island or a swamp. The fetch land, though, the life loss doesn't matter in the 40 health format. But the fact that the land enters tapped or untapped, it's very indicative of like the power that you have. I mean, obviously you can have a polluted delta in a precon, but having it, I feel like the issue lies more in being able to respect color fixing. Color fixing is part of the game, and people who choose to engage in fetch lands are, it's like, no, I don't really want to color fix as much, so I'm going to just get my shocks. They all come in untapped. I'm playing on curve, and now a 5-color deck just doesn't have the same, you know, like the same punishment, because I'm also having all the, you know, like the volcanic island, the tropical island proxies, you know, they're all coming in untapped, and I'm just playing 5 colors, but I'm really not respecting the fact that all X, you know, that all of my lands they're all coming in untapped. I have like the perfect fixing, so I don't have to like care about, I think that's it, right? I'm not respecting the little mini game that Magic has of color fixing. Color fixing to me is just so easy to do because I have the budget to upgrade all my lands. Do you say that would be, you know, because you were saying this started out as seeing a 5-color Kenrith deck and seeing that deck work with only basics. And to you, it was like, oh, wow, like, in comparison to, I'm going to use my own decks, like Oscar's decks. Oscar needs to use Triumphs. Oscar needs to do all of these things. But this person chooses to still engage in only basics, and he still is able to, like, play the game, you know? Do you think that, you know, like, that could be it? It's the fact that forcing you to play basics makes you engage in this game, right? Like this.
Yeah, I feel like that is a aspect that I enjoy in my decks as well. Is I feel like color fixing is a important aspect of the game, and if you have a bigger budget, you can minimize the, you know, like the risks, like the downfalls of including too many colors, or you can use cards that have multiple, you know, different color pips because your land base can cover all of it, right? But then, you know, this argument, then there's always the rebuttal, right? Oh, well, everyone should proxy. Well, then, yeah, yes, there's lots of like responses to that, but that's not. But that wasn't what I meant. Like the topic that I was trying to talk about is, well, I think well, if we're asking what my take on it is two things, because now we're talking about lands, right? Is my first take is any deck can just run on basics. Like I've done it. I've seen it. I've seen a 5-color Kenrith deck work on basics. Like if that can work, then any deck can work with just basics. And so that's the first thing that I do believe, is that you can just use basics and it'll be okay. Will there be some occasions where you've run into situations where you don't have the right colors? Yes, that can still happen, but that's why you need to build your deck around, do I have enough color fixing cards? Do I have enough, for example, talismans? Do I understand my deck's own, like, what do they call it? Like your color curve, where do you have the right spread of lands? And so if it's possible in a 5-color deck, it's certainly possible in a 2-color deck, right? I think that's my opinion on that. And then my other opinion, my second opinion, would then just be about how people aren't okay with Vampiric Tutor, but they're okay with Fetchlands. And so I would say it's not about, the cost of lands. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, that's not the point that I'm trying to get across. It's not the cost of Fetchlands or using triomes or any of that. Like, if you want to use those, like, go for it. I'm not saying you can't or that you shouldn't. My point is that basics will do just fine, and you can build around that, or at least I do so, and it's been doing just fine. And yeah.
This is really fascinating to me because I've had to so I make games, right? I've designed games and things. And one of the most interesting things about design is including problems for players to solve. And it's no surprise that when we have, as Magic players, okay, all right. As Magic players, we want to minimize the problems we're gonna have, so we have a smooth experience throughout our deck. So I think, trying to get rid of this sort of color fixing thing, because we want to just get to the main part, which is doing our main strategy, right? So we really undermine and try to push this part of the game to the side. I can see where you're coming from, right? Because by only having to use basics, it forces you to make harder decisions that you wouldn't have to do without them. And it would actually be nice if everyone had to do it too.
No. Actually, I think that missed my point a little bit.
Oh,
which what I was trying to clarify was, I'm not saying that everyone should only use basics. What I'm really trying to say is, everybody should be using Vampiric Tutors.
We all should be running Vampiric Tutors.
Yes, the reason why, and I know hot take, is because if you're okay with using Fetchlands, because the point of Fetchlands is for that consistent mana base, then it should also be okay to just tutor whatever you need. Because ultimately, it's just consistency. Right? You want to consistently hit your strategy, whatever that strategy is.
Okay.
That's all the tutor will do. So, which is my ultimate point, is that Fetchlands are tutors.
Okay. This is actually something I think is really cool. Because Fetchland, yes, it is tutoring. It is getting you the surveil land, lets you look at the top of your deck, you throw away something. It is making your plays more consistent. And I know that once you have the perfect, like in Teysa Karlov, just getting white and or black already on that turn and fixing my mana issues is already such a big step in trying to get my plan in. I do think tutors are nice in smaller bursts, though, because the difference between a Fetchland and a Vampiric Tutor is, at a certain point in the game, the Vampiric Tutor is just a stand-in for any other card in my deck. But the Fetchland cannot be a stand-in. Yes, it's going to let me at least reach a point where I can play the game. But yeah, like maybe I couldn't reach that point of playing the game. But I think that's what gripes me the most about tutors is they're not actually a card in my deck. They are a replacement for the best thing in my deck. And yes, like sometimes that is just an Urborg. Sometimes it's just the best land. But it ends up undermining the singleton format.
Would you say it's too consistent?
It's too consistent. That's my biggest issue with it. The land, yes, you are making this part of the game a little more consistent. So you can play the game. And yeah, I think like having some tutors in short spurts can be fine, But they can't but they can't give you access to the perfect solution every time. Like, for example, the Guardian of Eos, the one that gets a CMC1 creature,
Ranger Captain.
A Ranger Captain of Eos. It can grab a one CMC creature, an Esper Sentinel, a vampiric, the Seer, the Viscera Seer, or a bunch of random fodder for me to sack with Teysa Karlov. I really like that I have very specific things I can only grab with the Ranger Captain. Early game, it's a, Esper Sentinel. Late game, it can be the Viscera Seer, or something I can sacrifice. And I do like that those are the only options that can grab. And I do like that when you have your little goblin engineer that, you're throwing away your artifacts. I do like that you can only get those things out. Sure, sometimes you might get a portal to Phyrexia and start turning on your engine.
But see that comparison is then what I find funny is because the portal to Phyrexia is the best thing I would ever tutor in my deck anyways.
And then I suppose that the difference is that if you had it in Entomb, right? Anything in your deck, it would be a portal to Phyrexia, right?
Yeah.
So in its own way, Guardian Engineer might be better than Ranger Captain in that specific instance.
Well, Goblin Engineer is better than Entombed in my deck.
Yes.
It's better because it's repeatable.
Yeah.
I can do it over and over and over. Versus a vampiric tutor, unless you're playing like Recursion Spellslinger, it's like it's only a one-time thing.
Yeah.
So, but see, the fact that you make that distinction is what I find interesting. Is how, the fact that you see it differently, even though it's better. Yes, it's limited. Yes, it's limited. But at the same time, it's more synergistic.
It is more synergistic in your deck, but it's not a stand-in for a card. It turns on the value engine that your commander does. In Jimmy's Ayara, what's a full title? What's a full name?
The first side... Well,
yeah,
you know what? I almost never use the first side. I don't even know what the front side is. Yeah, I know the back side is Ayara Furnace Queen.
Ayara Furnace Queen. I'll have a picture of it up. Because you just need to get artifacts into your graveyard to turn on, the Goblin Engineer is not a stand-in for any other card in the deck. It has a specific purpose of throwing away a card into your graveyard. It's more synergistic, but it's not just replacing Living Death in your hand. That to me is the biggest thing. It's turning on your strategy. It's doing something really good, but it's not standing in for something. And Ranger Captain as well. It's getting you some really strong options, but it's not a stand-in for Living Death. And I think that's where I do make that distinction, that this is not a replacement for any card. Yeah, it's, of course, like... what's the Enlightened Tutor is a replacement for a Soul Ring or a Smothering Tithe or a Rhystic Steady, but yeah,
but see, I feel like, that distinction, like the fact that when I see people make this distinction, so you know what I then end up seeing, like, because of this, right? Mm-hmm. Because people insist on making this distinction. Like, even my own decks, right? I have a Goblin Engineer, but I don't have any tutors. But that's because the Goblin Engineer is a better tutor in my deck, right? So that's why I intentionally don't have a Vampiric Tutor. But, and so this is what I see. So what do a lot of people do in response to the thought of, I don't want to use tutors, right? So then you end up replacing it with, wait, hold on. Wait, that's just going to go into a whole other...
Yeah.
Wait, that goes into this whole other...
Like, despite the fact that the Goblin Engineer and the Vampiric Tutor are like getting a card from your deck and adding it into your hand, the Vampiric Tutor is a stand-in for that card, whereas the Goblin Engineer is a development piece that furthers your own game plan. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest distinction here is...
Like, it sends it to the graveyard, which is, like, better.
It's even better. And I think the big distinction is this is, like, something that you're using it as a synergy piece for a Yara. It's not just... And I think that's the biggest distinction about it. It's not just... Like, you do need to have an artifact-themed deck to make it work. It's not... Yeah.
But the one... This opens up another, like, branch of topic. But I feel like I need to bring it up anyways, is that what I then end up seeing people do to avoid tutoring, or at the very least, they didn't have access to it in that hand or that strategy, or I mean, their colors... you don't have black, you can't Vampiric Tutor anyways, right? Yeah. So, like, for example, what does Simic do in response to that? Well, the response is, by turn 5, you've drawn half your deck. Like, I feel like I said, maybe this is another hot take. Hot take number 3 is, actually, that was one of the points that I wasn't going to bring it up just because otherwise the conversation will go too long. But like in response to that, one of the other hot takes I have is, if you need to draw half your deck by turn 5 just to turn on your strategy, then I feel the strategy has already failed. If I'm kind of throwing out arbitrary numbers there, but you get my point, right? Like, a deck that takes like a 20-minute turn. They're drawing this, play this, draw this, near infinite mana. Now I go through this cycle of cards to keep drawing and drawing and drawing, and by this time everyone else are on their phones. They're using the restroom. They're grabbing a snack. They come back and you're still going at it. It's like,
the Izzet experience, man. Storming.
Yes, like the storm, landfalls, like that's interesting. Decks that cannot tutor then resort to these types of strategies where you take extremely long turns where you're just cycling through your deck just to do the one thing, which usually ends up being a combo or some winning play anyways, right? So my rebuttal to those types of deck is, you might as well have just tutored for it. Like, take that 20-minute turn, turn it into a 1-minute turn, and you achieve the exact same thing. Like, I think maybe that's a hot take. I know that maybe... And I get it. If you're playing mono green has plenty of tutors. What am I talking about? Like, I mean, every color can tutor in some way. And I feel like trying to replace it with just excessive card draw, like excessively long turns, is not what I want to see either. Anyways, that opens up a whole other branch of topics. But we're just talking about spicy takes. We're just dropping our spicy takes, and that's it.
I feel like I do this quite a lot, actually. Not gonna lie, dude, right? Like,
you do that a lot.
I do that. I'm like, dude, I don't run tutors. You're like, Oscar, for the love of God, can you win or can you not win?
Because then that I feel that then leads to boring games, right? Yeah. Where your whole deck is just made up of value pieces that that don't necessarily do anything, and then you're taking excessively, and I'm not saying you specifically, but just in general, like if someone's taking like an excessively long turn, like searching for answers or trying to get something to stick, you know, like to scrounge up some synergy that can maybe win the game. It's like, sure, you know, maybe certain decks are designed to do that, right? Is to lay under the radar. No one piece is worth removing specifically, and so you're allowed to build up these multiple value engines that then result in a win. Like, yes, that is a viable strategy too. And if you're playing a certain commander that can only do that, you know, that's a choice. That's a choice. Yeah. You chose it. You know, you chose that commander, and if that commander is that the only thing they can do, then sure, that is what it is, right? But I do feel that those. I mean, who enjoys sitting through that? And, you know, like I think that's why my current deck strategy building is like this. Basic lands for the simplicity, because it's doable.
Yeah.
I want a clear cut strategy, a strategy that does not revolve cycling through my deck. I want each card to matter and to count.
Okay.
Which is, I keep going back to it, I feel like a Yara just sits in the perfect like middle ground for everything. It's a 2-color deck, runs only basics. What I draw is what I use to win.
Okay.
And it does not rely on, you know, a necropotent. I'm not like drawing 15 cards just looking for this one card that combos me. Like, I feel like a Yara, the way I built a Yara is every hand I make counts, and I have to make it count. And I think that's why I enjoy playing that deck so much.
Okay. Out of curiosity, was that like the Bumbleflower critique?
Yeah. Well, wait, are we talking about your deck, or are we talking about Bumbleflower in general?
Well, I guess my deck in general.
Your decks in general?
Yeah.
I think a lot of your decks, especially when you first started making decks, were like that. They were just value engines on value engines, and you were taking very long turns just cycling through cards. Like, I do think it wasn't something I enjoyed experiencing. Like, it was, but then, like I said, I mean, everyone kind of does it at some point. Everyone tries it at some point because it looks cool. It seems impressive at first. And like I said, like I swing on this pendulum, and I'm sure other people do too, where, you know, you want to try to pull off this complex strategy, and then maybe I'm just in a mood or like this era where I enjoy this simplistic, straightforward strategies. You know. So not that there's anything. So I think what I'm trying to say is like there's nothing wrong with those, but I do think that at some point everyone can agree. At least I would think everyone would agree that nobody enjoys decks that have excessively long turns.
Yeah, anything that monopolizes the table's time, I think.
Or, I mean, like, maybe this is a pet peeve. Maybe this isn't a hot take. Maybe this is a pet peeve. But like, or when someone has such a lengthy play on someone else's turn.
Oh,
that to me is a pet peeve. I don't like seeing that. I don't know if that's something that other people think as well, but that is something I dislike seeing. Like okay, so it's like if you take a 20-minute turn on your turn, that's already, you know, tiring, right? But then when someone takes a 20-minute turn on my turn, that's even worse. Like, it's my turn. I'm trying to play something, and they say, well, in response to that, I'm going to draw 50 cards to look for a response to stop you. It's like,
oh my god,
it's those plays that just annoy me so. You know, you know what? This is a hill I'll die on. Like, I don't care. Whoever doesn't agree, like, I would love to hear the rebuttal to that. Like, if I like decks that are like, well, in response, I'm going to play Brainstorm, Preordained. I'm going to scroll rack, and then I'm going to fetch land into another scroll rack, and then I got my counter spell. And it's like, you know, those plays kill my mood so quick. To me that is like the coup de grace. Like, I don't think they're I will, you know what, maybe that's a good one to end it on. I will die on this hill. There's nothing anyone can say that will convince me that these are like healthy plays for the game.
Got it.
That was a good one. It's the spiciest one, right?
Spiciest one. Please.
That wasn't even planned either. That was just
kind of out of nowhere.
I was like, you know what? Now that we're talking about the most things I hate seeing the most, I think that might be the number one thing.
Oh my god. Anytime I see, I mean, for me it's like any Krakashima, because it's just going to take all the board's time. And honestly, Izzet decks that are Spell Slingers are just that used to be Gerson Star for the most part, for the longest time, and I just I had that Eureka moment that you had where it just did way better than I was expecting, and it was so non-deterministic because it deals 3 damage to everybody, draw 3 cards. Do I have damage? I don't, but maybe if I do this I can draw a card, deal 3 more damage, draw 3 more cards. And I just wasted the table's time. It was, it's strong, and I did like building it. And I think that was one of the first strong decks that I made starting out. And I liked it.
And there is that initial, like, like I said, we swing on the pendulum, right? Like, you running a complex deck and ending in a win. Like, there is a certain thrill to that. And once everyone wants to experience it at some point. Everyone will have that point, but I think it is. But yeah, I think once you've done it a few times, I think everyone can agree that those, plays that just take extremely long, or if they're just so oppressive and time consuming, it's not fun for the player. It's also not that fun for the pod. Maybe some people find differently on that, but
I just remembered seeing the looks on my opponent's faces, and you know how sometimes we build decks with the intent that, maybe our opponents can have fun too, right? This was like the furthest thing from that. Yeah. And when someone first said, hey, I think it was Sam that said to me, like, I actually enjoyed playing against the Nelly Borka deck because, that was like, out of all the decks you have, that to me was fun. Or when I had that reaction from Bumbleflower when I gave, what was the name of the combo red commander? The one that you made with Azula? Imodane? Was it Imodane?
Yeah.
Imodane, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I fed the Imodane deck with my Bumbleflower deck, and I fed him like 20 cards, and I just turned him online, and he attempted to win on the spot, and in response I Selfless Squire and had 31 counters on the Selfless Squire, and he kills everybody else, and he realized what I was doing. I was setting him up to win so that I could use that to kill him in a 1v1, and he just started laughing. He's like, that's insane. I've never seen anyone do that before. And that reaction was insane to me because he saw like all the pieces being connected. But I was like, dang, the fact that I could do that. I could sort of like control the flow of the game, and like, you know, I was able to let him do his own thing. You know, he was able to explode. He was able to do his own thing. Like, I've never had any other deck perform like this, or I've never had someone react. Yeah, we can. Yeah, all right. Anyways, I think these are our spicy takes. I hope you enjoy them. And I don't know, do you want to close off with anything, Jimmy?
No, I think I think that last point we talked about, I think that was a good one to end it on. Mm-hmm. If anything, that is one that probably I felt the strongest about. Yeah,
I think so too. All right. Thank you.